Welcome to the E-commerce Profits Podcast, where we feature top founders and experts in the e-commerce industry and take an in-depth look at the struggles and successes in growing e-commerce brands profitably.
Josh Chin here. I'm the host of the E-commerce Profits Podcast, where we feature top experts and founders in the e-com industry, and we go behind the scenes of the struggles and successes in growing a brand. Now, this episode is brought to you by Chronos.agency. Now, if you run a direct-to-consumer e-commerce brand that is ready to scale and to double your customer lifetime value through retention marketing, Chronos is your company. We've helped hundreds of brands scale profits with email, SMS, and mobile push while getting an average of 3,500% ROI from our efforts. We've worked with brands like Truly Beauty, Elias Skin, and Dr. Living Good, and many more. Now, the next step is to email us at sales@chronos.agency, or you can go to chronos.agency to learn more. Now, today's guest is James Bake. He's the COO of BestSelf Co, a multi-8-figure company that creates tools to help people think bigger, achieve more, and enjoy today. They launched their first flagship product, Self Journal, on Kickstarter in 2015. They bootstrapped their way to multiple 8 figures in the first 4 years. Now, James is an e-commerce veteran with over 10 years of experience working with DTC e-commerce brands, Amazon marketplaces, and consumer-facing subscription businesses. His superpower is helping teams organize the chaos and focus on what matters most to help businesses grow. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Josh, so much. It was a pleasure to be here.
And let's dive into it now. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you because you have a really interesting background, from being a yoga teacher to a marketer for such a long time, and now ending up as a COO. You have been a practitioner for many, many years. So let's start from the beginning. How do you end up in the world of marketing?
Oh, wow. So I think I've always wanted to be in marketing. When I was in high school / college, I actually worked for a printing company, and I was doing kind of their marketing for postcards and things like that. And I think what I remember is the company did printed statements for like utility brands and utility companies and credit unions, and they were trying to get more into the digital space. And as I saw them, like, oh, this is way back in like the early 2000s. There wasn't a lot of training on it. So when I was in college, I was like going to school for business. I took an e-commerce course, and they were using this, like, I don't know, it was an older Microsoft server that never worked. It was 10 years old at the time. So I got really excited about it. I met with professors like, this seems like the most complicated way to do anything. Why don't we use, like, I think it was OS Commerce back then. Like, why don't we use something like this? It seems really easy. I can go buy a domain on GoDaddy. I can load it up there, and we can like build our little website and or e-commerce store there. Which that 15-minute conversation turned into a whole course curriculum that I sat down with my professor with, and we outlined, and then we demoed it in a couple different courses, a couple different classes, and then that was something they taught for a couple of years, which was kind of fun to see that how that evolved. But again, that's like kind of my personality. Is I love kind of taking things and being a little scrappy and figuring out a better way to do it. And that's really kind of how it started. Is again, that kind of how it started my e-commerce career, is getting into it, seeing like how to figure it out and how to be a better at it than what was there.
That's incredible. And I think that has been a theme, like just striving for better, striving for improvements. Even today at BestSelf Co, we were just talking a little bit, kind of taking that little opportunities for improvement, and taking every opportunity, especially in a climate like today, change being such a, that's the only constant that we see today. Tell me a little bit about that process of adapting to change and taking that as a catalyst for new ideas.
Yeah, I love that concept. That's like something that I wholly embrace. And I think it's kind of interesting because if you think about our products, like the intimacy deck, I have one. The intimacy deck, it sounds like such a simple product. It's 150 cards, conversation cards. It's only $25, but the simplicity of it is what makes it so beautiful. It helps couples get closer together. It's saved marriages and even started new ones. It's a really beautiful thing when you see your customers come to you and send photos of their engagements where they've used your products as part of the proposal, or they write in and telling you how they've been married for 20 years and they're just now figuring out and finding things about their partner that they never knew before. So it's really interesting when you think about, like, in business, how putting a little bit of change is a catalyst to spark new ideas. But even our products kind of live that too. Like, by changing up our routines and adding in a conversation starter in your daily routines with our partner or with our friends or something else, it sparks change and it helps create new ideas. And I think that's something beautiful that I think we all can kind of take away with.
Yeah, I love that. And what's the biggest change that you personally had to adapt to in the whole COVID era?
Oh, there's so many of them. I think, like, part of the part of it has been, if we talk business wise, I think part of it has been adapting to, like, the constant change, and being ready for it. And then kind of getting into that mindset of, like, okay, expecting something to happen and kind of planning for it, or trying to be creative with it. Like, our logistics and fulfillment, our logistics and manufacturing process kind of got upheaved a little bit. Like, now, before we had like maybe a 7-week turnaround, now we're looking at like 170 days turnaround for products to be fulfilled, or not fulfilled, but like from manufacturer to our warehouses. So that's a huge challenge for us. And so now, what do we do about that? How do we fix that? And how do we, get our products to our customers, and then plan ahead for that? So it's really changed our thinking and our planning, so that we're now thinking out farther than we were before, which has pros and cons. But that's a big thing, I think, is always being prepared for some sort of change. The other thing that I'm a big fan of, especially with COVID, it was kind of an interesting thing, is we had someone leave the organization, actually an agency that was part of the organization for a while. They left the organization, and when I first started thinking about like replacing it, it was very easy for me to go as a hiring manager, like, okay, maybe what I'll do instead is I'll just fill the position internally. It's really easy to write up a job description, start interviewing people, cog, wheel, done. The system already works. Why not just keep it going? But what I did instead is I used it as an organization, an opportunity to make larger changes in the organization. So we have a couple of people internally on the marketing team. We're a very small team. And I started kind of poking around and saying, hey, this is the position we're hiring for. These are the kind of things they do. It kind of works really nicely with what you're doing. And I put some feelers out to see if they might be interested in potentially taking on the role, or maybe splitting the role up a little bit and having different people take on different parts, and then just hiring someone completely different, or a role that's completely different than what we were used to or what we needed. And it was actually kind of interesting. So we actually saw, after a couple of days of kind of talking and poking and putting like some seeds in, I actually saw people kind of raise their hand and said, hey, yeah, I actually think I can add that to my plate, or I can do that too. I just need a little bit of learning. And then someone else on the team said, yeah, if she does that, I can take off those things off her plate, which was kind of like a whole kind of snowball effect. So instead of just filling the system with another cog, we actually started to build a better system. We started using internal talents and reconfiguring like our day-to-day operations so that we can do things better. And we can not just, do things as they were before, but really help us think through, like, okay, what are the processes that we look at for what this agency did, or these people at the agency did, and how can we just integrate them better into our systems, and how can we just do it better and provide a better experience overall for the company. So that's one thing I think, like, when someone leaves an organization, using it as an opportunity to like make larger organizational changes.
And that's such a scary thing to do, I think, because you're forced to, we're forced to confront the fact that, all right, do I stick with what's working and that's comfortable, and do I go out on a limb to take a risk on seeing if an alternative would work better? How do you overcome that?
It's a big risk.
Yeah, and how do you overcome that mindset, or do you not see that as a risk per se?
So I think one of the things that I like to do is kind of my other point is I really like to give people creative freedom to try things out and to kind of see where it leads. Like, this might not work. Like they might not, this organizational piece might not work, but I put safety nets in, or I'm kind of monitoring it from afar to say, okay, if something goes wrong, I kind of have a plan B in the back pocket, or I know enough where I can jump in temporarily and help coach them. So it's usually kind of that concept. And I think you mentioned earlier that, I'm trained as a yoga teacher, and it's not something I don't actually teach. I did a little bit here and there, but what I did was I started yoga and I really enjoyed it. And when the opportunity to take this $200 training class came about, I was fascinated about how the concepts of yoga and yoga teaching actually apply to business and life. And as a yoga teacher, we have this concept of holding space. And holding space is allowing students to explore their practice and being present with others and themselves. It's witnessing what is, it's being without distractions or desires or judgment. And it's really the focus of holding space is ideally on the process, not the outcome. So for example, if you're trying to get into a headstand, or you're telling people to get into a headstand, you don't want to be over prescriptive when you're cueing the pose, but you want to let them figure it out themselves. But you want to give that guardrails and some light structure of support and encouragement. That all applies to business, right? Like, so as I'm talking about, like having people develop professionally and even personally at work and giving them new responsibilities, I want to hold space for that. I want to, create that light structure and give them the guardrails where they know if something happens and they fail or they fall or they make a mistake, it's okay. Like, we're here to support you. We're here to figure it out with you. You're not going to get in trouble for it. We want you to learn from it. Now, we don't want you to make mistakes that are just stupid mistakes, but make mistakes that because you're trying to figure things out. And I think that's where the magic happens.
I love that concept, hold space. And I want to dig a little bit deeper into this. So the idea of holding space and allowing for a kind of a comfortable zone where failure is okay. But to allow that to happen, you need good guide rails of kind of precautions of what's okay and what's all right is over the line. How do you define those guidelines?
It depends. It all depends on the situation. So I think I think one of my favorite things to say is like constraint sometimes creates creativity. So it's kind of giving some constraints, it's like constraint based problem solving, I think is a good way to look at that. And using it as an opportunity to give yourself a little bit of deadlines or timelines of what you're going to do, but also know, okay, where are the breaking points? We'll give this, for the change in the organization, we'll give it 3 months, and that's kind of the runway we'll give it. And after 3 months, we should know by then if it's going to work or not, or does it make sense to bring on extra training or some courses that they can do as well, and then see how it goes. I think even with hiring new people, you have that onboarding program, and pretty quickly within the first 30 days if they're a good fit or not. So usually it's putting a time constraint in things. But I also think it's kind of a constraint with new ideas too. I think that's one of my favorite things in the organization is to find a point of friction and intentionally get involved with it or bring it to light. So it's kind of what's the elephant in the room, and then go after and kind of hey, let's talk about this. Oof. From friction, I think comes those solutions. One of my favorite quotes is from Brene Brown, and she says, "The middle is messy, but that's where the magic happens." And I live that. I love that. I try to find that middle messy area, and then not necessarily exploit it, but dig into it. What can we do to be vulnerable, to kind of test our limits a little bit, get out of our comfort zone?
I love that. The challenge with that is, and I love that quote, "The middle is messy, but that's where the magic happens." But the middle is also where there's a lot of chaos, a lot of uncertainty, and where the end is often very hard to see, where things are so foggy, where you kind of don't know when you're near the end, especially when you're dealing with a problem without a defined time constraint, a time frame.
Yeah.
How do you wrap your head around an issue like that?
That's a good one. So I think what I'd probably say is, if you can't find some kind of constraint or like some kind of boundaries that you can put in things, or guardrails you can put in things, I think one of the I was going to say, I just had an idea and I can't remember what it was, but I think one of the things that we do a lot is just communication. It's making sure we're all on the same page, we're communicating, we're checking in with each other, and we're all on the same page. I'm a big fan of managing by commitment. It's a concept that's been in management for years. We do it across the board in the organization. We also do it with our vendors. And so it's setting those expectations of like, okay, here's what we're striving for. And usually you can put a due date to almost anything, or a date that you want to do it by. And then you're doing check-ins to say, okay, how are we progressing towards this? And do we need to course correct? And I get it that it's messy and like maybe the outcome doesn't get there. I'm a huge believer is that when you're looking on a road trip, there's a point A and a point B, and there's 50 different ways to get there. You don't know what the best way is until you explore it, right? Or you don't know what you're going to find along the way until you explore it. And sometimes having that open mind and be like, okay, we're going to try different things. It might not work the way we thought it was, but maybe there's something we can learn out of it along the way. So it's a good question. Like, how do you get uncomfortable with the uncomfortable? Or how do you get comfortable with uncomfortable? Yeah. It's challenging and it takes practice, I think.
Repetition. Very interesting. Now, I'm going to share a personal example of what we are facing as an agency. I think that's going to spark some conversation. And I guess selfishly, I'll like some ideas from you as well. So as an agency, we've been around for about 4 years now. Throughout this 4 years, we have been blessed with really amazing clients and people and partners that we have grown organically through inbound leads, referrals, word of mouth, exclusively. So for that reason, we never really had to go out our way for business. But we've come to a point of kind of, I guess, number one, saturation of the marketplace, where that's everyone's an agency today.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier.
Super competitive. And number two, it's also a point where now our systems are working incredibly well. Retention is amazing. We have NPS scores and satisfaction scores above 9 on on most levels. Now we're kind of ready to kind of switch up the dial and scale, but we don't have a dial, and that's kind of the problem that we're facing now. How would you begin unraveling a challenge like this?
So I think, we talked about this beforehand, and I think this is a problem that lots of people face, especially in the agency world, but even in the direct to consumer world is, I look at competition is, and especially with COVID, I think it's kind of put gasoline on the fire of competition. Now everybody's an agency, or everybody has agency, and no one wants to work internally. Like we've been kind of looking for a in-house media manager, and it's been extremely hard to find someone because everybody works for agency or wants to be an agency model or freelance because they can take on a lot of clients and they can make a lot of money. Fantastic, love that. But I also need someone dedicated to work on our business. And that we're not fighting for someone else's time, and we're paying premiums for it. So I think that's it's a challenge on both ends. And I think what, in my mind right away, where I look at it is okay, how can we start being adaptive in the marketplace? So maybe it's evolving our services. So for your example, as an agency, maybe it's adapting your services so that you're more competitive than others, or you're adding something that's not as done for you, right? Maybe it's systemizing in a sense, or, kind of changing things up a little bit. And again, this is on the fly, but it's thinking about, okay, what's the evolution of the agency space and the services that are offered, and how can we adapt to that? And then kind of do something that no one else is doing yet. I think that's where my mind would go. As I look at it in kind of the D2C space or BestSelf space, that's something we do constantly. Is when I go look on Amazon, I can see a bunch of different people popping up decks. Conversation decks are there. It's not too, to be honest, it's not too difficult to come up with them. I think if I had to sit down before BestSelf, I probably could say, I could do that. But when you really think about the work that goes into it, the thought process go into it, the intention of the questions that we're putting together, there is a magic. There's a secret sauce to it. And I think what we do is we add in additional content with that. So not only are we creating a deck about relationships or conversation starters or ways to get out of your comfort zone, but we're also creating content around it. So like with Courage Over Comfort, we have a challenge that you can do. It's a 30-day challenge to help you get out of your comfort zone. So it's with Catherine, and she's guiding people through everyday challenges or challenges every day to help get out of there. So that's something we did to be a little more competitive. And then we build upon that. Like we're coming out with new products in that aren't necessarily decks to help kind of go deeper into it. So maybe that's the intro. And then we get something a little bit deeper, taken to the next level without giving too much away, because we have some new products in the pipeline that I'm really excited about. But it's like the deck might be the introduction to it. And then the the best advice is like deeper or more thought-provoking, intensive is what's next for us. Our next products we're creating for that. So I think that with an agency, kind of the same way is like, what can you do differently? Because I go online and like I'm on Facebook all the time and I see like agencies and then like done for me email templates constantly. I go spend $80 and get 150 done for me emails. Woo! Like that's, where's the secret sauce in that? Like,
Exactly.
Or I can take a training course and everybody can teach me how to do email.
Yeah.
And that's probably my path to least resistance as a marketer or early marketers. I'm going to go buy this, $100 course, $200 course, because I think I can do it myself. But the mistake potentially is like, what else am I giving up? Like, what am I not focusing on? And that kind of goes back to my philosophy, like focus on what matters. Is like, sure, I have to remind myself this every day. Sure, I can figure that out, but does it make sense for me to figure it out? Is that the best use of my time? Or should I hire experts like an agency? So I think, this is a long-winded way of saying like, evolve and kind of figure that piece out. Is maybe it's training people on how to be better email marketers so that they can do it themselves, because there is a desire for people to want to learn how to do it. So maybe you're a training program and then you naturally get some leads because they go try to do it and they're like, that's too much work for me. Why don't I just have you do it? Like,
That makes sense. And
that's my free advice for the day.
thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. And let's go back to you and so as you're explaining that, what's going on in my mind is that you have a way of zoning in on and it was an intro that I wrote for you. Your superpower is in creating calm from chaos and clarity from mess, and understanding what to focus on and what to work on and what to prioritize on. How do you come to a point where you we're so good at this, and how do you identify something like that out of like all the skill sets that you've done? You've been in very different fields, from SEO to affiliate marketing as well, to
Yep.
all kinds of stuff. How do you end up with knowing what you're best at?
That's a good one. So I think, I like being scrappy. Like I said, I like finding and creating the meaning out of chaos. And, I like having a lot on my plate, and I actually love juggling things, but it's also having those problems to solve, because I think it makes life a little more interesting. I've been told, and I kind of think this, that I have a great eye for connecting the dots and looking for the root of a problem to be solved. And so typically, and what I've done over the years is I've learned or trained myself to like not try to solve the surface level problem, but like, okay, is there something deeper that we should be working on here that's going to solve it systematically, so we don't have to just put a band-aid on it or lipstick on a pig. It's where can we, when it makes sense, where can we take a step back and try to fix it systematically so that this problem doesn't keep coming up. I think what we talked about earlier on the show was about at this point of like an agency, or even in our business, we took a little bit of time and said, okay, hey, we are doing great, or things are doing well. They could be better. Like, we don't necessarily have we have our systems work great for where we're at now, but they don't work if we want to grow. So what can we do to improve our systems, and to improve our processes, or even our partners? Like, we have been with the same logistics company, the 3PL, I don't know, for like 3-4 years. They're fine. They're great for what they can do, but we hit capacities at them. We became too big for them. And so we had to take a step back and start looking like, okay, what can we do differently, or who can we go to that's better? And, we explored all kinds of options. And, at one point we had like a 10-minute conversation about, should we just build our own warehouse? Bad idea. Don't do that. I'm not going to do that. Someone else might want to do that, but I'm not. That's not our expertise. So I'm not going to do that. But we actually looked at other 3PLs, and we actually found a 3PL that actually works great for our products, like the deck. I can go a whole different things, but like we talked about, hey, like this is getting expensive to ship. It's under almost like 14 pounds or 14 ounces. And there's a threshold of like 15 or 16 ounces to get down to your USPS priority mail. And that's like $3.50 less per package. So we're like, oh, what can we do there? So as we started exploring new 3PLs, that question came up is like, hey, if you can make this 2 ounces less, you can save $3.50 on your shipping. And so then we put our brains together. Yeah, it's huge. Like if you think about selling tens of thousands of units a month, that's a lot of money that goes right to your bottom line.
That's like 15% of revenue.
Yeah, shipping's expensive. So we started thinking that through a little bit. Like, okay, that was just like the start of, hey, our 3PL, we're starting to see our SLAs are delayed, our costs are kind of high, like those kind of things. And just having those conversations, again, it's finding those points of friction and start intentionally getting involved with them. Like we started asking questions. And then when we met a partner, they're like, yeah, if you can get your product weight down to this, you can save a ton of money. We're like, oh. And then we went back to the product team and we said, okay, what can we do to like re-engineer this so we don't lose quality and we make it a better product? And it's fun. That was a fun exercise because not only did we find a new 3PL who was a partner in our business, but we also improved the product, reduced the weight, and are now saving a ton of money. So focusing on that profit. So that, again, that's where it was messy. There's a little bit of chaos, and we kind of just listened to like where the conversation led, and then we try to see what we could do to help. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the goal was to improve profits and to have a better experience for the organization and to help it scale so that we could be ready.
What changed that was really good. So I guess that was a big that's a big change, right? What else changed in the course of 2020 and leading into the fourth month of 2021 for the brand?
Oh wow. Okay, so a lot has changed. So we've launched new products. So I think we've launched 4 new products this year or in the last like 6 months. So that was a big thing we did. We have systemized our manufacturing process better. So now we're forecasting out, because one of the biggest things we saw is like our manufacturing lead time was taking longer than expected. It sits at ports a lot longer than expected. Even when it's not at port, it takes longer to go in transit or be received for our 3PL because everybody's online. So we've had to sit back and like systemize that a little better and also update our forecasting processes. So I think that's been a big win for us, is to like take a few moments and like, okay, we constantly look at like when we place an order, we track how long it takes. And then we use that knowledge to say, okay, now it's taking 170 days to receive to us. Like that's not acceptable. And we're working on fixing that process. But now as we start thinking about Q4, we have to start planning that out now. We have to start adjusting our timelines so that we can react to the marketplace, right? We have to react to the space we're in. So that's one thing. New products, have new processes around manufacturing. I think marketing as well has been a big shift. And I know it's a very relevant topic with iOS 14 right now is, tracking is completely changing. And I think the marketing world's freaking out a little bit about it because there's just so much unknown with what's going on. But it's making us think about how we market, and it's thinking about what channels are we in and where are our eggs. When I first started, one of our biggest challenges was Facebook was about 50% of our revenue. And that's a huge risk for any company. And one of my goals in the first 30 days, as soon as I identified it, was like, okay, we have to diversify. We have to not be so reliant on Facebook. And, Facebook hiccups for a day and you're like, oh my God, my business is failing now. You can't have that. Like that can't happen. So now we've really invested into other channels, and we're getting into more of a testing mentality. So we test and try, and I'm happy to say like Facebook now is less than 25% of our overall revenue, and we're ramping up
Wow.
other channels that are working really well. So that was another big change that we did. Um, and then people wise, I think we've always been focused on people development, and I think more this with COVID and not being able to do retreats, and understanding that mental health is as important as physical health. We put a lot more emphasis on our people and trying to make sure that we are giving time off when needed, or having those online team activities, or working on personal growth plans. We've implemented OKRs a little more structured, and part of the OKRs that we have internally is you also will have to have a personal goal. It's recommended you have a personal goal, and it's kind of fun to watch people share their personal goals with everybody and the progress they're making on them as well.
That was a lot. I love that. Let's unpack that.
It's been it's been a busy year. I'll say it's been a very busy year.
No doubt, man. James, so Facebook now accounts for less than 25% of BestSelf's revenue. Is there any one single channel that accounts for more than 25% today?
I'll probably say email. We've put a lot of emphasis on email and growing our email list, and
Hell yeah.
automating email as best as possible. And I think that's really helped us a lot. And the other thing is it's a lot of like organic is climbing up higher, more and more every day. We put a lot of emphasis on creative. But what we did is we try to make sure that we're not standing on one leg anymore. So now it's a lot of different channels. I'm really excited about YouTube. I think YouTube has a lot of opportunity. We just launched our first major YouTube campaign. We dabbled in a little bit, but we actually shot a video in-house. So we have an awesome video producer who came up with this great concept and came with a really great video, and we're testing that out now. And I think there's legs there. I've heard lots of people say that it's like equal to Facebook ads. So we're trying that a little bit more. But yeah, I think my goal has always been is like focus on profitability, and focus on making sure that we're not reliant on one thing. It just hurts the business.
Gotcha. I love that. That music to my ears when people say that email is more than 25% of revenue. That's always a good thing. That's profits and just predictability overall is just so much more stable when you have a.
I will say with email, like I'm getting really excited about SMS. Like this is funny. I probably have I have a different opinion than a lot of people about SMS. I don't like SMS in the current state. I think it's a horrible customer experience, and I think it's horrible marketing. It's just like you're blasting out to people, and I think that's just like the worst way to be marketing, and we're guilty of it, and it's just how it is. I'm so excited we're in Klaviyo, and Klaviyo is talking about more conversation piece. I cannot wait until it's all the way rolled out and we can actually have conversation with our members like that and our customers. That's gonna change the game. Like I hate getting text messages from brands of like, buy this. Like, it turns me off. And I'm like, no, I don't want to buy it. Like I want to text you and like have like a little bit of a relationship and have someone on the other end that's going to respond to it. I think like, bots are great, but bots have been useless in some cases. I think even where like Facebook Messenger in my mind left didn't work out. It was like everybody tried to make it bots when I think you need to have the human element. I think there's some automation place in there, but I think that conversation is going to be a game changer for brands. And if they can figure out, how to scale that in a sense, perfect. I think that's where it's going to be a win.
Let us peek behind the curtains a little bit on what your plans are with conversational SMS. I think that's super interesting. I was just about to bring that up, actually. I do think that is the next most important step that I think brands or anyone who cares about their brand should be doing. Is that is the relationship that you can build out of that experience is something that cannot be replaced with any other channel, I feel.
Yeah, I think that's true. So like one of the things that let's go back to Facebook a little bit, and I'll use that as kind of an example. So if you're familiar with Facebook advertising, you can dark post ads, right? Or you can, I think it's considered dark posting still, but you can dark post the same ad across multiple ad sets, and you can use that social proof and share it across. It's great to have social proof on an ad. So What we do is we dark post and we share or use the same ad on multiple ad sets, and we've used them for months now. And what we do is we actually have people on our team that are responding back to people in the conversation section, like the comment section. And it's the goal is to try to have a conversation with them so that people respond back, so that you're getting that dialogue in the ad comments. And guess what? That's social proof. Facebook loves that. So we've actually started that, that conversation marketing in our Facebook ad comments as a way to help boost our social proof, our rankings in our Facebook ads. But now we can take that same concept a little bit into our SMS marketing. And so what we can do instead of, hey, there's a 20% off sale, we can actually potentially post like a card and say like a question and get them to respond back a little bit, or, engage people a little bit differently. Yeah, I think that's an opportunity where I'm really excited about is how do we do it where it's not like weird? Like it might be weird to get a text message from BestSelf that says, what's the last random thing that made you smile? And then you respond back. It might be a little weird, but it might create a dialogue with people. Or you can ask people like, hey, it's the first of the month. What's your goal for this month? And then we like dialogue and say, hey, great job. Like we give like words of encouragement. I think that's what we're kind of excited about, is getting that engagement with people and being that like supporter, that cheerleader for people, so that they're thinking bigger and they're achieving more and they're connecting a little more deeper.
I love that so much. And the challenge I think most listeners would have in your mind, and I do as well, is how do you do that at scale? Especially, you just can't replace that human touch with bots like we just established. What would you do to overcome that challenge? Would you build a whole team around that?
I think like to start with, it's going to be something where we're gonna test it. Like we see that it's successful in like Facebook ads and the comments. So I think like once the technology is more available and ready, I think like if they're pretty close, we might be in beta. We haven't launched it yet, or this kind of concept, but I think it's going to be an investment. We're going to invest in a person or two. And then what we're going to do is we'll test it in segments. So it won't be like sending, tens of thousands of messages at once, but maybe sending a hundred and seeing how it does and then evolving it from there. So I'm a personal believer of like, let's dabble a little bit, let's get some learnings and then automate where it makes sense. But let's get some human interaction and see what works best. And that I think that's where we'll start and then go from there. But I think it's going to be, my prediction is that we'll see a good ROI from that because we'll get that LTV, and it will make sense to hire like customer service or maybe I don't know what you call them, cheerleaders or customer engagement specialists. That'll be able to man those channels.
I love that. And people, let's talk about people. So retreats, how often did you have them pre-COVID? Once a year, twice a year?
Twice a year.
Once or twice a year. Same. Our team is fully remote. We used to have what's called a workation twice a year.
Oh.
We were moving into a twice a year kind of a thing where we brought people from all around the world to a single location, and talk about our goals and it's typical stuff. And now that that's not available, we grew pretty quickly in the middle of COVID. So we have, I think more than half the team have not met one another in person, like ever. Only through Zoom.
We might have the same situation actually. I think most people, like half the team has not met each other. So we've met each other through Zoom. That's fascinating. So like, did you go, like I know you're based in Singapore. Is everybody in your team in Singapore, or are they distributed?
We're pretty distributed. So I'm based in Singapore with my co-founder. We got people in Malaysia, the Philippines, the US, UK as well, South Africa, and a couple of other.
Okay, so they're everybody's all over the place. That's the same challenge we have. We have people in like the Philippines and UK and Belgium and all over. So I think it's challenging, but like we have fun. Like, so we do icebreakers. Like I just did one of these a little bit ago, but we do icebreakers on calls. We do, we share a lot of personal things, which is kind of fun. And so we have that kind of bond where we, people get familiar, like we like to share dog pictures. I don't know if you can hear my dog snoring right now, but he's snoring, and everybody knows that Ty is sitting next to me 24/7 snoring. And it's not me snoring. So if my camera's off, they're like, is James sleeping? No, it's the dog. But we have that.
Pug?
Yeah, Ty's a pup. He's back there. One of them.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, he snores all day long. It's cute. But to answer your question, I think like it is a challenge. It is a challenge, like when you're a remote distributed team and you want to have that in-person bond. I think like, I've seen it numerous ways of like, well, I missed that, just that coffee room kind of banter where we can just chit chat and talk and see how things are going or get a pulse on things. That eye contact is a little different in person than it is in Zoom. The other thing is, I think, is like the collaboration is great. I think everybody's doing a great job, but there's sometimes I miss being in a room with people and they'd be able to write on a whiteboard, and you can't duplicate that as much.
Yeah.
I think we've been a remote company since the beginning. I think we found good ways to do that, but we like the retreats is something I miss because there's things that you want to just kind of get a couple people in the same room and just kind of work through something, and then not be so on with like the camera. I will say one of the things that I found like really kind of helpful is some meetings will just not have camera on. And I like that. I think that's actually like, hey, I've been like, I'll tell my team like, hey, I've been on Zoom all day long. Like, do you mind if I just turn my camera off or can we talk on the phone, and I'm gonna go for a walk while we talk. And I think that's been really helpful. Like, so we'll like a couple people on the team and I will go for walks for our one-on-ones together, but we're not together. So, but it's just a change in scenery, and you kind of have a little bit closer bond because of that. Like, and it's kind of fun. Like, the other day there was like a dog bark in the background, or like, I don't know, birds chirping, and like, they're like, oh, I can hear the birds chirping. I'm like, now we're connected in a different way. So little things that I think bring people together.
And OKRs, is this your first cycle?
We've done something similar to OKRs in the past. And so this is the second quarter that we've kind of officially done like team-based OKRs. Like we've done like company OKRs, and then this year we kind of broke it out into individuals. So this is our second one. It's going pretty well. I go back and forth for like, is it beneficial to have like a pass-fail list for some people versus like OKRs where it's actually there's numbers driven, because not every position can have like a metric tied to it, or it's a little more challenging. That's actually kind of fun to figure out the metric, but sometimes it turns into like a pass-fail list. Pass-fail meaning like, did you complete it or not? And I think that's been kind of like the fun evolution of it, is adapting it to different people's positions.
It's such a challenging thing to implement. We're actually on our second year of OKRs now, and we're finally feeling like we're getting the hang of it. And it's hard when you have a team of, so our team is like almost 80 people from all around the world. So it's hard to keep everyone on track with what OKRs are meant to be and what they're meant not to be. And you did something really interesting. You recommended that people have, as part of their individual OKRs, a personal goal. How does that work, and how do you fit that into the whole organizational goals?
Well, are your OKRs like, do you do them quarterly or do you do monthly? How do you structure yours?
We do quarterly OKRs.
Yeah, that's what we do too. So kind of part of it is like the first quarter we did it like, I think our eyeballs were bigger than our mouth, and everybody had like 20, which, that happens. So we got excited and ambitious, and we did knock off a lot of them. And I am a big fan of like stretch goals, but quarter two, we decided to go to like 3 to 5. Like we got a lot done in Q1. We're good. There's more we can do, but let's get into like not low hanging fruit stuff and get into deeper. And so part of that was like, here's the 3 to 5 things that you're going to do company wise, your OKRs for the company wise. But what's one thing you want to accomplish? And it was kind of fun because then again, that goes back to that culture and learning about people is, I said I wanted to do a 14-day course that I wanted to get done, or a 14-day challenge that I wanted to do. And so that was one of my OKRs this quarter, and I got it done. I'm super excited about that. It was a little bit stressful finding the time to get it done, but I did it. But other people talked about like, is like some in our product development team was like, they don't work in coding, but they're like, I want to learn, coding, like a little bit more about uh, database management, I think is what he was thinking about. And I was like, that's really neat. That's something that, I would never have thought about as your personal thing, is you want to learn more about like how to join tables and, how to do SQL statements and things like that. That's really cool. And it's interesting that that's something you do outside of work, or kind of part of work, but outside of your normal day-to-day job. So I think that's what it is. It's like, do you want to read a book? Do you want to take a challenge? Do you want to learn something? Like, get into a different habit. And then we support each other and we kind of check in on a monthly basis saying, oh, how are you doing with your OKRs and your personal goal? And, I think the interesting thing, like any kind of goals, because we love like the self journal and how goals do, is like they evolve and change over time. And I think we're getting ready to finish up April. And so I already know like one person has decided to change his personal goals. So we're going to talk through that a little bit. And like, what does your personal, like, what are you going to do instead? Like, I think he tried something, didn't really like it, and is like, why I'm not going to stick through this, but I'll do something else instead. And so we're going to adapt and change with that. Like, I think that's kind of a beautiful thing. And then having that open, vulnerable discussion as a team, like, hey, I planned this. It didn't work as I thought it was going to work, but here's what I'm going to do to kind of evolve it instead. Versus like giving up completely. Because a lot of people do with their goals is like, if it doesn't seem unattainable, it's not what they really thought, they give up. And sometimes it just needs to, you need to, I don't know, course correct's a bad word, but recalibrate, right? Like, all right, maybe there's a better way to do this or a different thing I could be doing. It's not giving up necessarily, but it's like learning from the assumptions you made and applying it to something else.
Yeah, and I think that it's so powerful to have personal goals as part of something you do at work and as a team, because then you have like natural accountability partners versus saying that I'm going to work out every single day and I'm telling no one about it. So it's never going to happen. I love that idea.
I think that is amazing. Like, I would love to do that. And if my team's listening, I would love to do some sort of like challenge together. We've talked about book clubs and we've done some book clubs, and that's been kind of fun. But I would love, like, I know friends that work at other companies have done like a Spartan race together when it wasn't COVID, or they do something where they're like working towards, like they track the rings on their watches. And I'm like, that sounds like so much fun. Let's do that as a team together, because you're kind of building each other up. I think the fun thing this year, what we've seen is, like with COVID, I think everybody had the opportunity to grow differently. And I think maybe a Q3 goal would be, or maybe a personal development would be something to do as a team and like kind of do a team challenge. I love that idea. That could be really cool, because again, you're getting that accountability, you're getting that energy, and it helps you push yourself farther.
Exactly. And what other companies or brands that you look up to in terms of their culture and the way that they've built their team?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer. That's a hard question to answer.
What about just brands that you look up to?
Yeah, brands that I look up to. I'm kind of eclectic with the brands that I look up to. I think like one, kind of being in the yoga space, and also, kind of the world that we've been living in the last couple years, is I love seeing brands that are being more inclusive and accessible with their marketing. I'll pick on like Lululemon. I think has been a fantastic brand of that one. They've been doing a much better job of updating their imagery across the site. So like you have different models of different types. And I think that's beautiful. I think they could probably still be better, but they're stepping in the right direction, where you go in and you see someone like, I don't consider myself a thin man. I am a little chunky and I'm okay with that. And when I see representation of that, like Target does a fantastic job of that too. When I see that representation, it makes me happy as a human, but also happy as a marketer. So there's a number of brands I look up to that are doing a fantastic job of really diversifying their representation. And I think the great thing now is you're starting to see a little more organically when people are using user-generated content in their marketing efforts. And it's not always like a model of some sort. It's, real users who are using it. I think that's, I can, like Target and Lululemon are the first two that I can think about that they do that. I saw, I'm trying to think about the other name of the brand I used the other day, but think it was like a men's face care line that did the same thing, like just different men at different sizes, or different skin types that you didn't expect.
Yeah.
Or I'm like, that made me feel more comfortable with the brand and wanting to buy it. And thinking to buy it. So
and they want your business. So I think a lot of brands and I guess conversations I've had is that this is kind of just like social justice stuff and like woo stuff, and it's not profit driven, and so companies shouldn't pay attention to it. But I think that it has a good overlap with company performance and just doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Like what you've just described, right? It's good for society, it's good for business as well, because people resonate with that, and people are demanding the brands that they buy from to be more inclusive and more open-minded. So I love that. What's one advice that you have for brands that are looking to step in the right direction in the way that they position themselves as a brand and how they run marketing?
One of the things that I love about BestSelf, and this has been going on for years, is they listen to their consumers. So we actually have a Slack channel that says, like, it's called the Voice of the Customer, and customer success stories is another one. So we have like success stories and voices of customers, and we openly share pain points of our products with our customer, with our internal team. So everybody on the team sees it. Even the day you hired, you get added to that channel. So you get to see if there's ever a pain point, if there's been a struggle, or there's been something. And what we do is we kind of embrace that, but we also embrace the success stories, and we learn how people are using it. So I think I mentioned earlier, it brings us joy when we see people, like someone reached out to us a couple months ago and asked if we could create them a card so they could propose to their girlfriend. And I was like, that is amazing. And then they send pictures afterwards, or they tell us about how they're using it. But one of the things that I love about BestSelf, it's ingrained in our culture. We have a Facebook group, and there's almost 40,000 people in it. And we listen to those, and we take screenshots, and we put it and we share it with the team. We talk about it, and we see how we can be better. Or we also use it to see how we can solve their problems. So it might not be a problem with us or with our products, but it's something that they're challenged in life. And then we try to see if we can create a product around it, or create content around it, or something that we can solve for those individuals. And it's part of our culture. And I think that's a great thing for any brand to really get into, is get to know your consumers a little bit more, get to create that voice of the customer channel, create that success story channel in your Slack, and get your customer service team to share kind of like the pain points and the success stories, and make it part of your day-to-day reaction to see like where are people struggling and how can you help as a brand. And I think that's something big, because it helps not only like your culture, you get to see who your customers are, and then you get to start adapting your marketing to people like what is like Seth Godin I think says like people buy I buy things from people like me, and so that's a very common thread. So like look at your customers and try to find it. Facebook has lookalike campaigns, like same concept. Google Ads has similar to concepts. Like we should be doing the same thing in all of our marketing. Is people like us buy, or people, I don't remember the quote, but it's something like I buy, or people buy things with people like us. I think that's how it goes. We'll have to look that up later and put it in the show notes or something. But I think that's my biggest thing. Is I say, pay attention to your customer, listen to your customer, create those two channels, be open to their feedback. Sure, sometimes it might not seem very intuitive or like that they know what's going on, but you never know where the collective conversation could lead.
What's one advice that you would give James 10 years ago, before the whole world of marketing and you can go even further back if you like, but I think 10 years is a good time frame. What's one advice you would give?
I think that's a really good one. I think I always struggled with vulnerability, being vulnerable in life, and I think especially at work, I think when I was younger, I always thought there was like this vision of what a leader or an executive or a manager should be. And they're maybe a little more buttoned up. They didn't ramble in conversations, and maybe they didn't bring up uncomfortable conversations. But I think if I was going to tell myself something, I think like one, be okay with being vulnerable. And if you're not okay in that situation, or if you're not in that environment, then it's time to leave, and that's not the best place for you. But you should begin with the humility of someone who's not sure and the excitement of someone who knows that it's possible. I think that's something I would tell myself is be comfortable with the uncomfortable and be uncomfortable being vulnerable, and surround yourself with people who embrace that vulnerability and encourage it.
Beautiful. James, last question. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners that we haven't talked about that I haven't asked you yet?
I think we've covered a lot today. This has been a lot of fun. I think like where I look at it as from an organization or even from marketing is I always think that there's opportunities to improve, but there's also areas to celebrate, right? So like, I think they go hand in hand. Like, when things get messy, so they're very, very messy. I think when problems happen, like that's life, right? That's business. We should embrace it and celebrate the wins where we can. And even if it's like a small win of like, fixing something that was broken, that wasn't our fault, hey, that's something that like maybe distract you from the day that we can celebrate. So I think that's a big thing. Always being willing to celebrate the wins. We do one of my favorite things here. Another thing that we do that's really fun from a culture standpoint is we have Success by Friday. And on Fridays, we go around the room and talk about 3 wins that we've done for the day, but we also do shout outs. So we, we go around the room and we, or the Zoom, I guess, and shout out someone who's like helped you, or someone you're proud of, or someone that you just want to like give them a good pat on the back. And I think that's beautiful. I think more brands should be doing that.
Oh, I love that. We do something similar called Chronos Highlights once a month, and we we kind of celebrate like mini wins and big wins throughout the month, and kind of just do a little bit of shout outs to just people that we appreciate. So that's really cool. It's very nice to see.
That's awesome.
James, thank you so much for being here. And if people are interested in connecting with you, how should they reach out and how should they get in touch?
Yeah, you can just email me. I'm pretty open. My email is at james@bestself.co. It's bestself.co. And
go check out bestself.co. They have some amazing products. We didn't get to try the icebreaker deck today, but I think that's going to be a super fun one. I'm definitely going to get my hands on the intimacy deck. That sounds like a fun thing to do on the exercise.
To do with your podcast, guys? That could actually be a whole other podcast. No. I'm saying that could be a little bit fun.
That's going to be a little bit too intimate. No.
You never know. You could make, some of the questions. Last parting thought, like if you ever get a chance, we were on GMA, and it was actually like, I don't remember, it was last year, and it was like a kids section. But they were talking about the Little Talk deck, and then one of the personalities like picked up the intimacy deck, and they picked up one of the first questions. It was a little embarrassing. I wouldn't say raunchy. It was deep. It was like a very like, you might want to ask this at home without your kids listening. And everybody on the screen was bright red, and it was funny. It was funny, but again, there's some questions out there that
can you share what the question was?
I don't remember. I'll have to find it, but it was funny. Like I think all of us were watching because we did like a live showing of it. We're watching it, and the guy pulled it out, and you could just see his face like turn bright red, and then he read it, and we're just all like, ah! But it was a great opportunity for us.
that has to be good, some good PR for sure.
It was enjoyable, but I think get the intimacy deck and like try it out on the show and see what happens. Just pull randomly, see what you get.
So I was thinking of doing that with my girlfriend, but that's a good idea too. Maybe try it out on the show. Who knows?
Probably better for your girlfriend, but.
All right, James, thank you so much for being on the show.
Josh, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the E-Commerce Profits Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get notified of future episodes.